The Reverend Jennifer VonRue is our MLK Keynote speaker this year. Reverend VonRue was the 2021 NAACP Community Service Award recipient of the Wilkes Barre chapter. She also was the creator of the Black Lives Matters movement Wilkes Barre chapter. When the committee was looking for a speaker, it was no doubt that Jennifer was the clear choice. She is originally from Ohio and eventually moved to this area to continue her work. Please welcome Reverend Jennifer Jo VonRue.
I'm so honored to have been asked to speak here at Misericordia, and thank you to everybody who's attending. Sorry, I'm just getting my screen switched. I grew up in a very small racist town in Ohio. I knew that it was racist because the language of racism lived in and was spoken in our home on a daily basis. I remember finding a white robe and hood in my grandfather's closet as I was poking around one day. I cannot be certain what that white robe was for, but knowing what I know now and looking back on my childhood and my grandfather, who was unapologetically racist, one can come to some conclusions. I was always told that our city schools, void of any brown or Black kids, were the best schools around, and that our neighborhood, also void of people of color, was the best place to live. In her article on white fragility, Dr. Robin DiAngelo writes that white people are taught not to feel any loss over the absence of people of color in their lives. And in fact, this absence is what defines their schools and neighborhoods as good. Whites come to understand that a good school or a good neighborhood is coded language for white. This dynamic of gain rather than loss via racial segregation may be the most profound aspect of white racial socialization of all. Years later, when I was to begin college in rural Kentucky, I was shocked and amazed at the variety of races, and I was scared. I was scared because I was unfamiliar with people who were not white like me. And because I did not try to dig in to understand this fear, I continued to be sucked into my own white privileged world, a world in which I did not have to consider the thoughts and feelings from those who did not have white skin. About 5 years after that experience, my husband and I would move to Tacoma, Washington. We rented a house sight unseen. Directly across the street was a huge house, almost out of a Halloween movie. It was gray and dark and kind of spooky. It made me uncomfortable. One day while I was out in the yard working, I saw 3 huge Samoan men walking from their house to their car. Seeing these large, dark-skinned men was all I needed to become fearful. Occasionally, I would see them out and about, but I tried to avoid them. That was my white fear settling in again. The white fear I learned from my family of origin, to fear those who look different from me, no matter what I may or may not understand about them. 6 months or so after we moved in, I came home and parked my car in the driveway, and those big men were out in the yard again. As I was getting out of my car, they started walking towards me and I froze. One of them, who I would later learn was the eldest son named Amosa, said to me, "Someone came and parked in your driveway earlier while we were out washing our car. And since we didn't recognize them, we stayed in the yard until they left 20 minutes later, but we wanted you to know that someone was here." These men who did not know me or my husband from Adam or Eve, these men who I had convinced myself that I should fear, had just come to tell me that they stood in watch as protectors over our home. Let that sink in for a moment. Would you find yourself doing the same thing for strangers, especially strangers who did not look like you? I'm not sure if I would have at that point in my life or not. From then on, we became friends with the family, seeing each other daily and sharing words of greeting and stories with one another. This was really the first relationship I had with people who were not white. Many things factored into that life, always living in white neighborhoods, always going to white schools. My privilege, though I would not name it that at the time, allowed me to always be with people who looked like me. Fast forward 5 years to 2014 when I began seminary, when the shift in my racial perspective really began. The very first class I took at Meadville Lombard was called Multicultural Congregations as Faith Formation. It was slated to meet in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I signed up for the class because I wanted to become aware of how to have a multicultural congregation in hopes of attracting people of color to my future church. I did reading after reading for this class in preparation for the intensive week with my classmates and professor. I learned all about the Tulsa Race Massacre. If you don't know about that, Google it. And how the Tulsa, Oklahoma Unitarian Universalist Church was doing deliberate and successful multicultural work. But I never looked inward until I arrived in Tulsa. This class had nothing to do with attracting people of color to our predominantly white churches. It had everything to do with giving young white ministers a glimpse of what it is like to be a person of color in this world and teaching young ministers of color how to survive in my predominantly white religion, which is a liberal faith. The course constantly demanded self-reflection about ourselves, our race, and the way we live in this world. And it was hard. My body responded with nausea and tears, lots of tears. I cried at least every hour for that entire week. I cried because I was beginning to see the harm from the racist narrative of my family of origin. I could see how my complacency in white supremacy culture was actively causing harm to my Black neighbors. The reason I tell you this and inform you about my past is that I am hoping that you hear something that connects with my story and your story. To remind you that even if you grew up in a racist home, even if you are a member of a conservative political party, even if you have never until today understood the phrase Black Lives Matter, or maybe you have never even considered the impact of your white skin, that you can change. I am giving you permission right now to say, I always thought the world was one way, and now my eyes and heart are open to learning a new, different way. In fact, we all must continually change the more we learn and grow. I hope that you are beginning right now, because of what I've already told you, to consider not only the color of your skin, but to consider your experience in this world because of the color of your skin. On the struggle for racial justice and Black Lives Matter, the Reverend Aisha Ansano writes, "It's not the specific methods of Black Lives Matter protests that are making people uncomfortable. It's the fact that the struggle for racial justice is seeping into their, white people, awareness in ways that they can't ignore. White people are visitors to the struggle for racial justice, ones that aren't forced to be there, but can choose to come in and leave whenever they like. People of color reside in the struggle for racial justice by virtue of their race." This month, we celebrate the life of the prophet, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as much as I admire this great man, too many white folks have used him to continue to minimize the differences between the white community and the Black community. Many times when skin color is named as a reason for white violence, white folks quote MLK in opposition to protest. "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Or, "Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend," in opposition of Black people protesting in the street. Yes. These are good and true. And the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. over time has been shaped into a comforting image with all the sharp edges removed. He was not the all peaceful man that many of us white folks think he was. Oh no, he was a fierce and determined fighter ready to take on any opponent. Martin Luther King stood inside the fire when many others weren't willing to. Christian and political scholar S. Kyle Johnson reminds us that Dr. King was solid and absolute in his commitment to nonviolent action on behalf of justice. He was not against conflict. He despised any peace construed as the absence of tension or at the expense of different truths swept under the rug. He disrupted the comfortable. He stirred the pot. He demanded that as Americans, we gird up our loins like adults and look straight at the naked wickedness right inside of our own beating hearts. He condemned white America unequivocally and with a broad brush. He demanded that Black Americans stand up for themselves and not settle for anything less than full equality in every sphere of society. He told his followers to break unjust and oppressive laws. He knew that no true reconciliation could emerge without bringing unspoken, secret, hidden tensions to the surface and putting them to adjudication. And people hated him for it. Martin Luther King said that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And back in his day, that was true. In his time of ending segregation, of trying to end segregation, though we know that segregation still exists, of showing up for Black rights, of demanding justice for other people with Black skin, in his day, there were very few white people showing up. So in his honor, we as white folks must follow in his legacy and do the work now. Us white folks can no longer rest on our laurels and watch as our Black siblings show up in the streets and protest against the senseless murdering of Black humans by the police. Us white folks can no longer rest on our laurels and watch our elected official take away voting rights. Us white folks can no longer rest on our laurels and watch as the local schools that are no more than 10 miles from where you sit, are necessarily and unofficially segregated, where they are literally sending the white kids to the newest building and segregating the Black and brown students to the old asbestos-filled buildings. Do you have any idea of the deep racism and white supremacy culture that exists in the Wilkes Barre school system? Even here in Dallas, this city is entrenched in white supremacy culture, and I don't know if anyone is asking questions. White folks can no longer sit back and watch our world continue to be segregated and ruled by white supremacy. The work is yours, and it is now. We have incredible Black leaders in this county, Ronald Felton, Darrell Lewis, Cherie Clark, Bill Brown, and so many more, and it is our job to listen to them, to follow them, to show up for them when we are needed in the fight. True peace, Dr. King said, is not the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice. So let your existence in this world be the presence of justice. This is not the time for casual social justice, where you change your profile picture and add the words Black Lives Matter. This is a time to be actively engaged in our society against white supremacy culture. And I promise you that every single person in this space has the power to do that. Start interrupting racist jokes and comments when you hear them. You cannot imagine how powerful it will be for your friends when you interrupt their blatant racism. And yes, nice people who say racist things are racist people. Start having hard discussions with your families, your parents, your grandparents, your coworkers. If the only people talking about race are racist white people, we will never change the narrative. We need white folks who are committed to changing our society to be talking about race to their white friends every single day. Keep an eye on the news and start attending rallies and protests that are led by our Black neighbors. White folks must show up and support. Keep your mouth closed and your eyes and ears open. These are the change makers, and we need to be sure they have a platform. Start following 10 Black leaders on each of your social media accounts and actually read, think about, and share what they have to say about their Black experience in this world, whether or not you understand or agree. And even more importantly, look around at the people who have power in your workplace. What color are they? If they are mostly white, start asking questions. It took me 2 minutes of research to see that Misericordia not only has a middle-aged white male president, but that all 12 people on his advisory council are white, or at least white passing as their photos suggest. This would be a great place for you to start as students and faculty at this university, to get a group of folks together and start asking questions about who makes the decisions here. And in addition, and perhaps more importantly, asking for more Black voices to be present in leadership. Demand that your university do the real and necessary anti-racist and anti-oppressive work so those Black individuals are not tokenized and ignored. I'll bet your president would be open to this dialogue, and you could be the start of some huge change here, which could also expand to the borough of Dallas. And don't get me started on the borough of Dallas, which is led by 8 white people and a white police force. Black people live in Dallas too, and should also have representation. Attend one of their meetings, which are held the third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Go and start asking questions. Layla Syed wrote her book, Me and White Supremacy, because she wants to become a good ancestor, because she wants to leave this world in a better place than she found it for her children and for everyone else who is and who will be impacted by her being here on this planet today. So as we close our time together, I echo Syed's words. She writes, I want to speak to the good ancestor who lies within you, the person inside you that yearns to learn and grow each day, the person you are that knows that you are necessarily part of the problem, and also knowing simultaneously that you are part of the solution. Friends, there is great power and responsibility in that knowledge, but knowledge without action is meaningless. Syed reminds us that to dismantle this system of oppression and marginalization that has hurt so many for so many generations, we need all of us. In creating a new world, everyone's contribution matters. And as someone who holds white privilege, your contribution to this work is of the utmost importance. No matter who you are, you have the power to influence change in the world. The effects of your actions, whether consciously chosen or not, will impact everyone who comes into contact with you and what you create in the world while you are alive. You can continuously allow white supremacy to use you as it used your ancestors, to cause an impact of harm and marginalization to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Or you can intentionally choose to disrupt and dismantle white supremacy within yourself and your communities so that Black, Indigenous, and people of color can live free of racism and oppression, help change the world, become an ancestor your family can be proud of. The choice is yours, and the moment is now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was writing a number of things, and I'm short, but just know I'm giving you a standing ovation right now. And I'm sure people in the audience are doing the same thing as well. And I'll probably ask Lane to help me with the questions in the chat, but I'll start first by saying thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for those words. Thank you for your work. And thank you for putting the worth behind the work. We appreciate that. And my question is, because you were speaking a bit about privilege, and I love the fact also that you broke down how you can be a better ally in giving those points. Because I remember after the death of George Floyd, a lot of my friends, especially a lot of my white friends, they were immediately calling and asking, what can I do? What can I do? I don't know. And after I reflected about why I was getting the calls and what that was about, it resonated when you started talking about what privilege looked like. And I think some of us have the privilege not to see things until we're awakened by them. So can you speak a little bit about how you recognize I know you spoke about it a little bit in your presentation just now, but can you explain a little bit more about what that privilege or that white privilege affords and not affords?
Absolutely. So I really recognized my white privilege when we were in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And a very quick lesson for those of you who do not know about the Tulsa Race Massacre. Back in 1931, on May 31st, white people burned down 32 square blocks of Tulsa, Oklahoma, a neighborhood called Greenwood, where that was the black neighborhood of Tulsa. And it was aptly called the Tulsa Black Wall Street. It was a very, very prominent neighborhood in our country at the time. And some very, very horrible things happened. And in that class and learning about the race massacre, I realized how much privilege my skin affords me. So, I mean, the easiest things, folks, right? One of the things we think about is that my husband and I own a home. And part of our ability to own a home is that we have been able to get jobs to afford us to be able to get stocks, to invest money. And many people of color don't have that opportunity. It's a generational thing because, slavery was only 150 years ago, and enslaved people did not own homes and did not have property and money to pass on to their generations. And so other ways that my white skin affords me privilege is that I'm not followed around at stores like some of my Black friends are watching for shoplifting. I can live in the neighborhood I want to live in, and I can afford to live in that neighborhood, especially here in Syracuse. I could live anywhere, and that is not true for our Black and brown neighbors. It's easier for me to get credit. I have a name that sounds white, and my voice sounds white. So on the phone, when speaking with creditors or rental people, they automatically assume that I am white. And I'm allowed as a white person to choose when I'm going to step into the fight and when I'm going to move out of the fight, because my skin allows me to do that. But people with Black and brown skin can't take it off, right? That's why blue lives don't exist, right? The whole Blue Lives Matter fight, it's not a thing because police officers can literally take off their uniforms with their white skin and go out and live in society where our Black neighbors and friends cannot do that. Is that helpful? Was that too much?
I was getting ready to pass the collection plate. I'm like, preach, keep going. But yeah, because I experienced some of those things that you're talking about, and what that looked like and how real that is for some people. And I remember when around the Black Lives Matter, right after George Floyd, and I remember watching on social media somewhere they were showing, and it was in New York. There was a Black Lives Matter march passing by, and right down the alley or the street, there was this group of white folks having coffee. And I'm like, wow, we really do live in two Americas. We can choose to participate and not participate. And I have two more questions, and then we'll check in the chat here because I have you now. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to ask all the questions I want to ask because I just think you're absolutely amazing. But even as we're talking about the Black Lives Matters, what compelled you to get involved with it? Did you get any pushback, and what was that resistance like, and how did you kind of look past that, and what compelled you to be involved in the movement?
Yeah, so about 6 years ago, after I had started seminary, there were just senseless killings of Black and brown people by police, and it was just ridiculous. And after the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, I remember just feeling that I have to go do something. I can't just sit here. I can't just have my coffee, right? I have to speak up and say something. And so I started standing on the square in Wilkes Barre with a Black Lives Matter sign at lunchtime when there was a lot of traffic moving around. And I was just all by myself with a Black Lives Matter sign in the city square. And I did get a lot of pushback. I got a lot of people who would send me gestures or shout that all lives matter, or just say any number of awful things. And I also had a lot of people that were really glad I was there and were offering their support to me. And it was in that place where I was like, I'm just one person holding a sign. If I start a thing, maybe I'll get more people to hold signs. And so I created the Black Lives Matter Wilkes Barre Facebook page. And I want to say that was before I was educated enough to know that a white woman probably shouldn't be starting a Black Lives Matter Wilkes Barre Facebook page, but I did because I needed some change and something needed to happen. And so there were about 10 people on the Facebook page, and they would join me at noon to hold signs in Wilkes Barre. And we went once to Dallas as well, and we got some excellent pushback in Dallas. We really ruffled some feathers there, and that is excellent because we can't create change without ruffling some feathers. And so we continued to just hold our signs in Wilkes Barre. And then when George Floyd was murdered, suddenly the page exploded overnight to thousands of members because they were like, oh, this is a thing we need to join in. And And the square was filled with people holding Black Lives Matter signs, white people and Black and brown people. And it was just an incredible movement that I'm so lucky to be a part of. These days, I've moved from Dallas and now live in Syracuse. And I have moved, while I'm still an administrator on the Black Lives Matter Facebook page, we have the administrative team, which is mostly people of color, have meetings here and there. And I mostly have moved back and listen and follow their lead in what they need support on.
Thank you for sharing and letting us know that. But there's something you said that really resonated with me as you spoke. You said, I knew something needed to happen. And I think as we talk about Dr. King and the work that he's done and what we're seeing around here, if you see something wrong, write it. You don't know what that may be or what that looks like, but that's what it seems to me when you said something. You didn't know what, but something needed to happen. And you were before even the George Floyd death, unsadly, had occurred, but it struck a chord with people. And it's like, we have to do something to impact and affect change. And right now, as we're, there's a lot of political stuff back and forth. And even with some of the concepts and theories that you're speaking about, there's pushback on that and critical race theory. And, how dare you call me a racist, or how dare you do this? And it's just interesting to me that we get caught up in some of these buzzwords and we start arguing about that and not righting the wrong in a lot of things that are happening. And I promise everybody, I make this on my last question, so I don't want to capitalize all of the time. We need to have coffee. We really do.
Can I just add something to what you just said?
Mm-hmm.
So as a white person, you may not know how to move into this territory. When you see that something needs to be done or something needs to be said, when your friends or family make a racist comment and you don't know what to say, just say something. Say, can you help me understand what you mean by that? Because sometimes when racist people say racist things and they repeat it, they realize what it sounds like and what they've just said. So just say something when something feels weird to you, or if you're in a group of people and there's a microaggression thrown around, please Google that if you don't know what it is. And you see a person of color or whoever that was intended for hurt, like receive the impact of that, just say something. It looks like that statement hurt you, or you look uncomfortable. Just say some words, because we can't ever change the narrative if we don't speak up.
All right, I'm gonna not use my privilege and take over the platform, and I'll open it up for questions from the group. So if there are any questions out there in the chat, please feel free to ask questions at this time.
Kas, we have one question in the Q&A from Maureen. It says, who do you recommend we join with or follow to help support voting rights nationally and especially locally?
That's a really good question. I would highly recommend joining the Black Lives Matter Wilkes Barre Facebook page, where excellent things are posted and ways that you can get involved in the community are posted every day. There's a leader, Cherie Clark, in our community who is leading the freedom fighters in Wilkes Barre, and they are doing work around our community to help get people involved in having relationship, not white people coming in to save the Black people, but having a relationship with one another. And the freedom fighters are also doing some work in that. And please be involved with your local NAACP chapter. And also, the most relevant place I know to go to help with voting rights is a website called UU the Vote. So my religion is Unitarian Universalist. And we don't really allow our religious beliefs to play out, but we text bank and phone bank and make sure that everybody knows where to go to vote and how to vote and what the rules are for voting. And you can get involved that way as well. And I should have been prepared for this question. I'm sorry that I'm not. But if you go Google, how to help with voting segregation or redlining, then I'm sure you can come up with some pretty great answers. But thanks for asking that question.
Okay, are there any other questions in the chat? I guess I'm not seeing my chat, but so
we
that's why
have
I'm asking.
Another question, Kas. Matt asks, we are at a tense, divisive time in this nation and Americans of all stripes facing violence and scrutiny from other citizens. Where do you see some victories and, quote, good trouble happening on this issue?
That's a good question. I am a firm believer in protesting and rioting when your voice has been silenced. So some of the good that I see happening around this country is that there are protests happening, that people are speaking up. I don't condone violence. I don't appreciate that we're burning things or harming people. And we need to give marginalized folks a platform in which to speak up because they have been silenced for so long. And so some of the good I see that's happening is that white people are like, oh, this must mean something to somebody, and I guess we should get involved. Some of the better, great things I see happening around our country are that, looking at President Biden's presidential cabinet alone and how diverse it is. I don't know if they've done the work to know not to tokenize the voices of color in the presidential cabinet, but President Biden, who is an older white man, has surrounded himself with people who have different identities and different experiences in life. And so he can lead our country in a different and better way. And I look around at, I look at the TV shows that I watch. I'm seeing way more Black and brown people and disabled people on the TV. And I'm seeing more books about people of color. And I'm seeing that places are necessarily diversifying. Now, again, they need to also do the work. It's not about saying, like I thought when I went to that class in Tulsa, I thought I was going to class where I could be like, oh, look at all the Black people coming to my church. This is great, right? No. That's all about tokenization. They need to do the work that says, it matters to us what the Black experience in life is. And so we are going to do this work so that we can listen and have a relationship. And so I see, the different universities around the area. Misericordia has hired Kas, and she's doing an excellent job. King's College, where my husband teaches, they have a committee now that he's on for diversifying and racial justice at King's College. And we just see much more intentionality in the world in dismantling systems of white supremacy culture where white people are always in charge all of the time. I hope that answers your question. I talk way too much. I'm so sorry.
I have a quick question as Lane is looking through some of the questions or comments. And something you said earlier, you said you opened the closet door and you saw the Klan robe in your family's home. How do you address or have these conversations with people that are from another generation? Or do you have those conversations?
It is really hard. So when you invited me to speak because of Martin Luther King Jr., I love Martin Luther King Jr. and Martin Luther King Jr. did a lot of minimization around race. The things that he said about our kids will learn together no matter the color of their skin, we're all the same inside. This is all really well and good. And it has really made that conversation with that generation a lot harder, where they're all colorblind, right? So people in my church, whom I love, and they're all very well-meaning liberal white folks. And when I preach about white supremacy culture, they come through the receiving line to tell me that they're colorblind, which is very problematic, right? Because it matters what color we are, because our cultures are different and they should be celebrated. If we say we're colorblind, it means we see whiteness and we don't see other colors, and they don't matter, but they do, and it is important. And so I struggle having that conversation with that generation. I also struggle having the conversation with that generation of Black folks. So in our work for our interreligious work for racial justice, we will often have Black leaders of a certain generation that will say, God made us all the same. We're all the same inside. It's not about race. And really it is, right? Our country has proven that it is about race. And so it's just a really fine, complicated dance that we do. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a lot of times I just avoid the conversations with the older generations in my family. I'm like, we just trying to have Thanksgiving dinner. No one say anything that's going to make the turkey fly. But yeah. And I know that's why I said, because it is a delicate balance sometimes, and again, generationally, and in that space that they were in at that time, they had certain survival techniques And one of that was, this in this space and what that looks like. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Any other questions?
I do see that Christine Summers says, do you know the KKK showed up at College Misericordia campus when it opened in the early 1920s to scare the nuns away because they were educating young women and because they did not like Catholics either? I did not know that. It does not surprise me. The KKK is and was everywhere. They still are today. They're still very, very active, especially in the South. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of that happening, which is why we have to speak up and do something about it now so that we change this culture so that it becomes unacceptable for the KKK to be meeting in our society.
And how do young folks, especially college age students, and I say college age because I think Dr. King was young, when he got involved in this, and even John Lewis, they were college students, marching and doing the sit-ins. But how do they speak up in a space and feel safe and feel comfortable enough, or I don't know how to really frame that, but I think you know what I'm getting at. How do they speak up or find the courage to speak up?
Yeah, as a young woman, I get that. So granted, I'm a young white woman, so I'm afforded many privileges, and in a religion that was predominantly male for a very long time, predominantly clergy male, it could be hard to speak up in those types of spaces because you were afraid of the ramifications that you would get. And it's hard. The advice I have for you is put on your big girl pants. If not who, if not you, who? If not now, when? You have to ask the questions. Change makers have to put the big ideas in society and move toward them, and changing the world and changing the structure of race in our country is about you putting your privileged body and your privileged identity on the line. And that's hard. So you have to ask yourself some really hard questions. But that's what I have to say about it. It's hard, and do it anyway.
And I'm just trying to think of the courage that it took for Dr. King and all those folks to do what they had to do. But even the courage of you to stand by yourself in that square with the Black Lives Matter sign, knowing, there could be some danger in that. But I think sometimes when you feel compelled in your gut, really to do something and to do the right thing, it's like, people wake up, how can you not see what's happening?
Yeah. And honestly, I wasn't scared at all standing in the square because I'm white. I wasn't scared of my body being murdered by police or being murdered by any other entity because I was standing on the public square, and I wasn't worried. I mean, thank you. And I just want to name that my privilege makes me safer.
Yeah. And I think it was Cornel West I heard say it, but a Black male is murdered every 26 hours by someone of authority. And when you think about that and how that feels and sounds to a person, especially a Black male of color, I can't even imagine what that feels like, knowing that it's a thing. And I shouldn't say it like that, but a Black male to be killed every day. And it dates back to Emmett Till, and even before then, it's always been here. But, this reckoning with George Floyd really opened up the eyes to a lot of people and saying, this is just wrong. We literally, as a country, watched a person be murdered on television over and over and over again because they kept looping it back. And for him to call for his mother, who was dead, the last thing that a person can do where they feel safe is with their mother. For him to call for his mother, it woke everybody up. It shook something up in this nation to say, this has been going on. Now, what are we going to do about it? So thank you. Thank you so much for the work and understanding what this space feels like for marginalized people. And, we can speak it all the time. And, people expect us to say it all the time. But when it comes from you and from people who are like you, it makes it not easier, but we know we have an ally. We know we have a friend in moving this message forward. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I do see a few other questions in the chat bar. Do we have more time? Or somebody asked, they said, this is a personal question. Don't feel you have to answer. Do you have a relationship with your family now? And have you been able to change their ideology at all? My grandparents both died when I was in high school and middle school, when I was still racist myself. And so I don't have a relationship with them. As far as the rest of my family, it's interesting. I, do have a relationship with my aunts and uncles, and, like Kas likes to have Thanksgiving and I like to ask hard questions, and that's part of my privilege. So I go to Thanksgiving and ask hard questions about race or engage conversations about race because I need to be doing that. And it's interesting. I think that I don't know that I've been able to change their ideology, but I think they're thinking about things they wouldn't think about before. Any recommendations for dealing with open microaggressions? This has happened with a visitor on campus, and it was hard to deal with. I'd love to hear more about that scenario. Yeah, it's hard to deal with. Sure, I get that. I am hoping that microaggressions are one of the harder pieces to learn as a white person how to interrupt. When I first started understanding that microaggressions were a thing, I didn't know what to say. And so in a class in seminary with a bunch of well-meaning liberal white folks and 2 or 3 students of color, something was said in one of our classes. And I spoke up and I just said, I think that was a microaggression, but I don't know what to say about that. And so, say something, and then you're not necessarily going to change the mind of the person that said it, but what you can do is you can deflect the aggressor, so the person who is giving the microaggression, away from the person who's receiving it, right? If you enter into dialogue with that aggressor and draw them away into conversation with you, that's the first step you need to take. And then they may have some nasty things to say to you, and well, that's part of disrupting society. And you may not change their mindset, but you may say, what I heard you say was this, and try to get them to be thinking about it, or whatever you can do to make them think. Don't accuse them of things. Just say, what I heard you say was this, and I wonder if you meant to be that hurtful to that person, or whatever the case may be. And then later, if you need to process that, go and find a white ally that you can talk to and process your feelings. Please do not go to Kas and say, I just had this interaction with somebody and I need a Black person to process my feelings with, because Kas, as much as she's amazing, does not need her emotional energy sucked away by a white person asking about how to deal with microaggressions. There are white allies. Contact me, send me an email. It's on my website, joevonrue.com or .org. I don't even know what it is. Contact me. I'd be happy to talk you through that. The comment was from this person was, you can't touch the Blacks, and then proceeded to make a Jewish joke. That's pretty horrible culture that you need to call out, especially calling it out in front of other white people. It matters that somebody that their racism, their unkindness has been noticed, and that it does matter that they said that in that space and that it needs to stop. So do what you can, even when it's uncomfortable, because that's our privilege as white people. Thanks for asking that question. I know it's hard. I believe in you. I believe that you can do the hard things. That's all I got.
All right. I think that ends our Q&A portion of this. And I will say that the good Reverend wanted to come down, because when I called and asked her, would she be willing to do this? She said, I will find the time to do this. I will make the space to be there. And then, of course, the weather did what it had to do, and COVID does what it has to do. But we appreciate your presence with us today. We know as a university community, especially as we look at our charisms, we know we have to do the work. It's a part of our charter. It's a part of who we are, to make this world a better place. So thank you so much for being here with us this morning, giving us your words of wisdom, giving us something to think about, and giving us the tools that we need to affect change. It doesn't come easy. We know that, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end. So I will take this time and have everybody in the chat say thank you to you for coming. Round of applause.
Thank you for having me.
Standing or sitting ovation. And you know we're going to have you on this campus eventually. I'm going to find a way to have you back physically on this campus so we can have this conversation in person. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so
and
much.
thanks
Kas.
everybody.
Thanks everybody.